34. This one, guys, is going to be on prepping your vehicle for storage. Now, there's a few things you're going to need to know for this process. One of them is how you're going to store the vehicle. Winterizing a vehicle is super important to make sure that everything is put away the way it needs to be. So when you bring it back out of storage, you're not wasting a lot of time getting it ready to go. The tips I'm going to show you guys will help speed up that process. As always, let's start off every video with the announcements. Thank you guys for all the support. Last week's live did really well. I'm hoping this one goes just as well. We had a lot of engagement last week and we got quite a bit of people tuning in. So this was a really good thing. Again, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and ring that notification bell so you get notified when I go live. My lives are usually every Sunday or Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time here on YouTube. So let's go ahead and talk about the biggest topic right now when it comes to storing your vehicle for winter. The biggest issue is when you store these is making sure the right fuel is in the vehicle before you even put the vehicle away. Meaning you want to drive this vehicle for a while. We're talking of at least a good week or so of running it on nothing but non-oxygenated fuel. Why is non-oxygenated fuel so important to store a vehicle? Oxygenated fuel deteriorates rapidly, meaning that it goes bad quickly. When that fuel goes bad, it gums up injectors, it messes up everything that has to do with engine functions. Meaning we don't really want to have bad gas in there because we don't want to have to replace injectors, fuel filters, fuel pumps. All of these things are super bad when it comes to repair time and cost. And the last thing you want to do is bring a vehicle out of storage and have to eat a huge repair bill because you didn't put it away with the right fuel. You could use fuel stabilizers, but I don't really recommend fuel stabilizers for a few reasons. Some of those reasons are basically that fuel stabilizers do change the composition of the fuel. By running a non-oxygenated fuel, it lasts for up to about a year, meaning that you can put the vehicle away for a full year on non-oxygenated fuel and you can get back in it and start it right up like nothing has gone wrong with the vehicle. It will run just fine. Now, after that time, you're going to want to burn that fuel out. That is going to be one of your big important things. We got our first chat for today. Toy Tech iGaming. Hi, good to have you here today. Let me switch my chat for you guys right away. There we go. I like to have all chat set so I can see everybody's. So again, guys, today's video is going to be on storing your vehicle. What do you got to do to get it put away for winter? If you guys have a classic car, this is really important. Classic cars do need to have some prep work done to them. You got to do a few things to that car to get that car ready for storage. We're going to cover those in today's video. Got another one here. Plane spotting without scars. Hi, good to have you. A little hard to read some of these names when I'm trying to do this on the fly, but let's go ahead and dive into the topic. Guys, we just talked about why we use non-oxygenated fuel when we store our car. Let's talk about how much we need to put in that tank. Some people say leave the tank empty. Here's the issue. If you live in really, really cold climates and the temperature fluctuates a lot, here's the issue with leaving that tank almost empty. Air gets into that tank. So as the temperature changes, it can cause fluctuations. That fluctuation can cause rust inside metal fuel tanks. If you have a metal fuel tank, fill it all the way up to the top. Make sure that that tank is full when you store the vehicle. The reason for that is it will help fight to not have rust in the fuel tank. If you live in dry climates, such as like maybe Arizona, New Mexico, some parts in Texas, it's a good idea to maybe go ahead and let it drain down a little bit more. You don't have the wild temperature fluctuations like we do in the Midwest. If you do, then you might have a situation where you're going to want to either fill it all the way up or leave it empty. But honestly, if you're running non-oxygenated, you're going to drive the vehicle in less than a year, fill it all the way up. It really does make a difference. Put storage or put store in it. Yes, we're going to talk about the fuel stabilizers. Don't worry. Fuel stabilizers have their purpose, especially when you're dealing with small engine stuff. Anything like lawnmowers, snowblowers, stuff like that, that you put away seasonally, it's always good to put kind of a stay-bill in it or something like that to stabilize the fuel. When you're dealing with non-oxygenated fuel, it's higher octane and it doesn't have the components that make the fuel go bad. If you're going to store it for more than a year, absolutely put that in there. You're going to want something to keep that from having issues. You don't want your fuel going bad, because the worst thing that you could do is have to pump out a bunch of bad fuel just to start the car. And with the newer fuel injections, you don't want the fuel injection system to get wrecked, because what can happen is that fuel injection system, those injectors are very expensive. We don't want to be replacing those. So on this vehicle here, I've already filled this with 91 non-oxygenated. So this is already ready for storage. So what else do we need to do when it's time? Well, here's one tip that most people ignore is the tires. What happens when you store a vehicle with normal highway air pressure or even under? It can cause a flat spot in that tire. So the best way to not get flat spots in your tires is to air them up all the way, meaning that if the tire is rated for 40 pounds, fill it up to 40. If it's rated for 51, fill it up to 51. The reason why is when you fill it up, the tire balloons up. And you want to do this in the fall when it's cold. Don't do it when it's warm, because when you park it, that air pressure changes when you go into that colder temp. That lower air pressure can cause issues in the tire. Now I'm going to show you guys some of the demonstrations and stuff on what we're doing with the tires when the time comes here in just a little bit. So there is some demo coming up. But we want to make sure that these tires are fully aired up. The reason why is it'll get rid of the flat spots. That way we won't have issues when we take it back out of storage. I've seen people store vehicles with brand new tires. They store them, they take them out the next year, they drive them down the road, and it feels like a lumber wagon because they didn't air up their tires all the way. There's another way to do this to where you don't have to worry about flat spotting tires, but it requires more work. This is why I tell people air up your tires rather than putting it up on jack stands. The other way is to store it on jack stands, meaning you're going to have a good jack where you're storing the car, such as the storage unit. You're also going to have good rated jack stands and place those jack stands in the appropriate place, meaning you're going to want to be on a solid frame of the vehicle. On a pickup, usually you have a full frame, so you go just behind the front tires. So you place one just in front of the front tires, and you try to go to the back axle. The reason for that is you're stabilizing the vehicle. You're not allowing a lot of fluctuation in the frame. You're keeping everything level. The reason that I don't suggest that is what happens is your suspension now drops. As that suspension drops, that means that where the bolts are that are ran through for your suspension have a lot of pressure on the bushings, meaning that the bushings are under pressure. They're relaxed when there's weight on the vehicle, meaning when the vehicle weight is on the bushings, they're relaxed. When you lift it up, you're putting pressure on those bushings. Those bushings will start to deteriorate and wreck. That's why storing a vehicle up in the air is actually a lot harder on the suspension than letting it sit on the ground. The reason people do that, though, is so that they don't flat spot the tires. Airing the tires up all the way gets rid of the flat spots. So those are the two different storage methods when it comes to cars, such as either lifting or leaving them on the ground. Next, you want to do something that is more cosmetic, and it helps you get ready for the next season. Next, you're going to want to clean the paint. Make sure everything's cleaned up. You've washed it really good, done everything to take care of it. Now, I always do a quick coat on my vehicle before I store it for the wintertime, meaning that I'll clean off any bugs, and I'll put a cleaning agent and a protectant on the paint and glass before I put it away. The reason I do this is so when I get it out of storage, it's good to go. The only thing I might have to do is run a duster across it and pull off a little bit of dust that might be on the car just from being in a storage unit. If there's not that much dust, I won't even have to do that. But on here, I've already washed it, and just driving it back to my garage, I got a bunch of bugs. So we're gonna go over what I use for my stuff. I'll try to get you guys some links and stuff as far as what I use and who I'm going through so that you guys can get your own products. This stuff works great, and it's also a part of the ceramic coating that my detailer does. So the coating that I'm using to clean up the paint and protect it coincides with the ceramic coating that was put on this truck. And now this will be the second year that this coating has been on here. It's a really good coating. It's a 7-year coating if I was having it outside all the time, which I don't, which would help me, but it's nice to know that I have this vehicle protected. My goal is not to do anything crazy with this vehicle. I want to keep it around. I want to use it, but at the same time, I don't want to have a bunch of issues with the paint, which is why I corrected it in the first place. Putting this coating on before you store it doesn't only help when you take it out, but it makes it to where it's less likely to get scratched when you pull this vehicle back out of storage. So putting on a good coat of wax or a ceramic coating and then using the appropriate detailing materials that match that coating is really important to help you get that vehicle back out of storage. The last thing people want to do is take a car out of storage and have it just completely covered in a mess. It's going to make you not want to take that vehicle back out of storage. Then it might sit longer than a year. Then the fuel might go bad. You can see how this quickly becomes a downhill spiral when people store vehicles. The best thing to do is put it away in the best possible condition, so when you pull it back out, it's ready to drive. The only thing I don't do, and this is debated among mechanics all over the place, I don't do an oil change before I put it away. My reasoning why is when I bring it out of storage, I want to put fresh oil in it for when I am driving it. So I will drive it for the season, put it away. The first thing I do when it comes back out is I do that oil change. Once that oil change is done, I'm good to go for the season. So my oil changes are always done on spring, especially on vehicles I don't drive that often. If it's a vehicle I drive often, I'm just storing it temporarily. I'll just do the oil changes when I normally do them, which on my full synthetic oil changes that I do for me and my customers, it's about 4,000 miles. I don't like running too far past that, especially with newer VVT engines, just due to the engine issues that we're starting to see. Also, it does make a difference as far as the small valving and all of the channels that are going on right now in newer engines. A lot of them are using cam phasers. These cam phasers are going bad because the oil is getting too thick and gumming up those cam phasers, causing an issue. So it is better to make sure you have clean oil, but I always do my oil changes in the spring when I pull the vehicle back out or at the recommended mileage interval. It depends on time frame too. Usually if it's been more than 6 months, I will go ahead and do the oil change. But this vehicle, this is a once a year because of the amount of miles I drive it and because I only change it when I pull it back out in the spring. If you guys got any questions on today's topics, make sure you chat them in and I'll get them read here on screen. Looks like we got the first one. What's your thoughts about Alfa Romeo Galante 125 kW? Not familiar. Is that the EV version? Please let me know because I don't know a lot of my foreign stuff. I do know some foreign motor stuff, but I'm not up on like even the Stellantis stuff. If you guys ask me how the Stellantis system works and their cars and their setups, I wouldn't know. I've tried to stay away from a lot of the EV stuff. Getting back into storage, one other thing we want to do is make sure all of our windows are clean. So we're going to wipe our glass really well. We're also going to vacuum out our interior. We just want to clean this thing up, and we definitely do not want to leave food behind in the interior because mice will move into that vehicle and start chewing on other things that are not the food that you left in there. So looking underneath seats, cleaning underneath areas, not leaving any bird seed or any organic materials inside the vehicle is really important. Make sure that that interior is spotless when you put it away. We don't want mice and stuff getting into our vehicles. They destroy wiring harnesses, they chew up carpeting, They make a mess out of cars and can destroy the value of any car. Next one. JTDM 2.0 diesel. What's the topic on today? The topic today is storing your vehicle. So what you're going to do when you go to put it away in the storage, whether that be for a winter season or whether it be just temporarily because you might have other stuff going on and you have to come back to the vehicle later on. The diesels, the 2.0 diesels, I do know of them a little bit. I have not had a chance to buy one and really play around with it and do a super ton to them, but I've done maintenance on them, oil changes, tune-ups, minor things that customers have asked, such as intake setups. So for the most part, they seem pretty reliable, but they also seem a little anemic on the torque. And for a diesel, that's kind of a bad thing. Torque on a diesel is super, super important. So not having that torque there, you might want to look at the possibility of doing a bolt-on turbocharger kit if it isn't already turboed. If it is turboed and it seems anemic, you may have to do something with that stock turbo. You may have to replace it with an aftermarket. Those are what I know about that particular engine setup. So again, all vehicles, doing the tune-up is really important. Making sure the plugs are gapped right, making sure your coil packs are not very old, making sure that all of your ignition components are working properly. That's the key to having performance out of any vehicle. You could take this thing right now and not do any maintenance to it, and it would be a dog. I've done the maintenance to this, and this thing is snappy. This 3.4 liter that's in here is really torquey, and it responds really well because I've already done plugs, I've done the cap, I've done the coils, I've done the wires, I've put on the intake system, I've cleaned the throttle body. These are all maintenance items that have to be done on every single vehicle. It doesn't matter the engine size or any of that. That's actually good info. Thank you, Guy. No problem. Like I said, today there's going to be some info, and then we're going to get into some cleaning projects here on the Silver Swine, the 04 Toyota Tacoma. I'm going to show you guys how I do glass cleaning. I'm going to show you guys some of the products that I use to clean up this truck and kind of why I do what I do before I put the vehicle away for storage. This has to be done in order to pull the vehicle out next spring and feel confident and ready that this thing is good to go. I hate putting away a vehicle dirty and then it gets more dirty and then realizing next spring I don't want to touch it because I have to clean it, and then it sits even longer. The longer a vehicle sits and doesn't run, actually the worse it is on the vehicle. We don't like to leave vehicles sit and not idle or not run periodically. If they don't run periodically, what can happen is the oil will drain to the bottom of the engine and you won't get any oil to the top of the engine, meaning there's no upper lubrication to that engine whatsoever. So oftentimes when people do oil changes, they'll put an additive in, such as Lucas or something like that, that will provide a lubricant that sticks to vital components to keep your engine from going bad while it sits in storage. This is one technique that some people have chosen to use, especially on older engines, because it helps fight the wear when they fire it back up again. This engine's not that old, so I'm not too concerned with that yet on this one. Now, Crimson Vortec has almost 140 on it. Malibu Steel just reached 140 as well. So when I store those vehicles, I will be putting like a small amount of Lucas or a decent amount of oil additive into it to protect that engine during that initial startup afterwards. So we've covered engine. Let's cover the transmission and the rest of the drivetrain real quick. Number one on those, just go off your time frames as far as oil changes and make sure there isn't moisture in them, meaning when you bring them back out of storage, pull the caps on everything, check the fluids, make sure you don't have moisture inside of the transmission or the differential. If you do, drain the oil before actually hard running it or running it for a periodic amount of time. Drain that fluid, put fresh in, that way you don't spin that water around inside there, causing rust inside major components. Those can get really expensive really quick if you've got to replace a transmission or an engine because there was moisture in it, because you didn't check the fluid after you got it out of storage. Oftentimes I'll make sure that they're full, As long as they're full, you're good to go. Got a very difficult name for me to pronounce. Hi, good to have you on this Saturday. Again, I'm trying to do my lives every Saturday or Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Time on YouTube. Now, I do go on other sites, so you guys can also check me out there. But I try to mirror my content between all my sites when I do lives like this. But let's go ahead and get into the next one. I am from India. It's good to have you. I enjoy talking to people all over the world. It's nice to see you guys come in and maybe get a different perspective on where you live in your country, things you guys might run into when you store vehicles. For us, when we store them, oftentimes where I live, I'm doing it because of climate reasons, meaning that there's a huge drastic temperature change, or I'm dealing with a huge amount of snow or something like that. That all makes a difference. And how we store them makes that difference even more important based on what issues we're going to run into with temperature changing. If we go from super hot to super cold, there's a lot of influx in that temp, and it causes a lot of moisture issues. That moisture is not what we want to have inside of engines, rear ends, or transmissions. It can do a lot of damage really quickly. Brake systems have even gotten more picky with that with the newer ABS systems. So again, always make sure your brake fluid is full. Check all your fluids before storing your vehicle. Make sure you put it away. Let's cover one last electrical thing, and then we're going to get into doing some cleaning on this thing before I get into really kind of hard diving into you guys' questions, and then we'll cover some news topics. When you store a vehicle, it is always wise to disconnect your battery. The reason for this is you may have a slow draw that you don't know about, and running the vehicle every day, you may not notice that slow draw. Well, when you store the vehicle, you're going to be parking it and not looking at it for a smaller or maybe even a medium-sized extended time frame. During that time frame, it can draw the battery dead, meaning you'll have to put a new battery in it when you come back to it. I put 3 batteries in this truck because I forgot to disconnect it because I put this one in storage all winter long. Knowing that you can put in quick battery disconnects so you can flip a lever and disconnect the battery from the vehicle, or remember to disconnect your cables and move them out of the way so they don't accidentally touch the battery while the vehicle's sitting. I will now remember to do this because I'm sick of buying batteries for this vehicle. So that is one helpful tip I can give you guys when storing a vehicle. Disconnect your battery. Batteries will last up to 5 years if they're just sitting there, if they don't have any draw on it. If there's any draw on the battery, it's going to draw it down. Because without running the vehicle, you're not putting voltage back into that battery to build that battery back up. So yeah, that's the important thing with batteries. We've already talked about the drivetrain, we talked about the tires, we talked about suspension if you're going to store it on jack stands. One other thing that people might do is you might see them slide cardboard underneath. The reason for sliding the cardboard is then they'll see if there's any leaks when they come back to the vehicle and bring it out of storage. If there's any leaks, they'll know, hey, I need to fix that leak before I put it away, or if it's bad enough, I'll have to fix it before I start driving it. So that's a little tip that I've seen guys use. I've seen a lot of guys say, don't put cardboard underneath it because you give something for rodents, mice, whatever to chew on. So that one is kind of a double-edged sword as far as what people do. I personally will not put any additional cardboard underneath the vehicle. I also don't store anything in the interior additionally that could be chewed up and used for that. I make sure that all my compartments are closed. I don't leave anything laying around the vehicle. But I do make sure that I clean out the interior really well. No food left behind, vacuum everything, check under seats. If it has a compartment, I open them, fold down everything, make sure that there's nothing left in there for any mice or anything to get into that interior. There's a lot of wiring in these vehicles. Little bit of mice getting in there and chewing can be very detrimental to a vehicle being able to be driven the next season. So let me get a few products. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'll get you guys in close and I want to show you. I'll probably start with mirror. I'll show you guys some glass stuff. And then we're going to deal with some of the stuff on the front bumper. Now that's some of these stuff on the exterior. Interior is another deal and we'll do that shortly after that. Okay, I'm going to spin you guys around here. All right, so I want to get you guys at a good angle. You can see right there where a bug splattered. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go after this. Now this stuff from my detailer is called the secret sauce. He mixes this chemical himself and he uses this for detailing after he's done ceramic coatings. This stuff works great. I have used it on every single one of my vehicles and this lasts longer than any of the waxes on the market currently. This is not a wax though. This is a detail spray. So this detail spray will last longer and work better than any of the other detailers or waxes that I've seen on the market. I'm going to try to get his info and drop it into the description for this upcoming week. If you guys need any, feel free to reach out to him. So how we do this is we spray into the rag, not on the vehicle. We want the rag wet, not the vehicle. The reason why is this stuff is a coating, meaning that it will coat and leave an even coat however you apply it. So if I spread this unevenly and I don't cover the entire panel, it will leave streaks. That's how you can tell if a product is good or not, is whether or not it gets streaky. So as it's wet, I let it tack up for just a bit after I've cleaned up. So right now I've cleaned everything up. I let this just tack up. It's a little bit of a drying phase. So we let it dry up a bit. And then I come back in and just hit it quick and buff it up to a shine. I'm using very soft microfibers, not coarse. Make sure your microfibers are not super coarse. That will do damage to chrome and paint. So use a soft microfiber. And just like that, that is good to go for next season. Now, I have a couple more spots that I got to do up along here and the window. So I'll move you guys over here so you guys can see this. This stuff works on glass and paint. And I always reapply to the rag, never spray on the vehicle. So on glass, I do get a little bit more aggressive with wiping. I will wipe until the bug guts are gone. And then when they're gone, I'll let it tack up a bit. And then I'll come back and just dry it down. The reason that we're doing the dry part is so that we don't have streaking. If we don't come back and wipe, this stuff does streak really bad. So we do have to do that post-wipe. Techniques for this is basically this is your wet rag. This is your dry rag. Don't ever mix the two and don't spray the liquid directly on this one because this is your dry rag. This is your buffing rag. So we removed the bug guts on the section that I did. We got a few more over there yet. But it quickly removed all of the bug guts. Let's see if I can get you guys in close. I want to show you guys So right here on the bumper, we've got a lot of bug gut debris. Now, one reason that we clean these bug guts is we don't want that to be left on there when we put it into storage, because bug guts actually eat into paint. This is chrome, so the worst it could do is chew into the chrome coating. If it's super, super cheap, it might damage it over time. But we don't want those bug guts to get left behind and do damage to the panels. So we go after them, get them wiped down and off. And at the same time, we're putting a nice protective coating on it. So it's kind of a, at this point, you're doing a 2-in-1. And that's really what this is. It's just a 2-in-1 deal where you're putting down a decent protective coating and you're cleaning up that residue so you don't have that eating into the paint. And like I said, this is one of the easiest materials I've ever installed. It really is almost foolproof how this stuff goes on. As long as you don't mix up your rags, this stuff is super easy to apply, super easy to take off, and really does protect the paint. I've done a lot of car washes with this on other vehicles, and the car washes have always come out really good. The water beads and runs off really nice. I don't have streaking issues after running through a car wash. He is working on a coating that would last for over a year. And it would be the similar install as what this is now. I told him once that's ready to let me know. Because once it is, I want to demo it. Because if he can get a material that works as good as this, as quickly as this, then I definitely want to get my hands on it. So we have a small issue right here with it drying so fast that I couldn't get to it. I'm going to try to show you guys. I'm trying to get at an angle. So right there mid-screen, you guys can see a haze. That haze is from it drying too quickly. All I do is wet it down, go back over it, and the haze is gone. So that quickly, I can get rid of the haze. So now that bumper is cleaned up. Somebody says, hello from Venezuela. Yes, this is a Toyota Tacoma. This is the SR5 pre-runner. So what I'm doing is just trying to get this thing ready for winter. We're doing a little bit of detailing projects. I'm showcasing a product that is used by my detailer, who does all my detailing projects, unless it's something I decide to do in-house. And I do a few in-house detailing projects. But for the most part, I take a lot of the heavy buffing stuff to him. He's got all the tools right now. I'm still in the process of building my tool collection to be able to do more of the detailing. Plus, I do a lot more of the mechanical repair as well, so my mechanical tools sometimes take more priority than my detailing. You know, try to get newer scanners and upgrade a lot of my older hand tools. Okay, so we always want to make sure the headlights are clean. So if we've got any bug guts on there, we're going to want to use this stuff on the bug guts. Really kind of get those cleaned up. And putting a good coating on these makes a difference for longevity of these headlights. A lot of these are super cheap plastic, and I can tell you that this is super cheap plastic on these because these are aftermarket headlights. This vehicle originally came with the whole painted front assembly. It had the painted front grille, had the old school headlights that just really looked nasty. So I upgraded it to this style, and when I did, I went with the chrome style. Now, most people will do a chrome delete. I chose not to go chrome delete on here because I wanted to quickly be able to detail this vehicle and clean it up, especially if I was going to be at a car show or something, or I had to drive to a show with the vehicle. I didn't want something that would take me a lot of time to detail. And as you guys can see how quickly I'm able to just zip through this thing and clean this up. This hasn't taken me a lot of time just to do this front grille assembly. And I could really blast through this whole car in about an hour, maybe 20 minutes if I had to. That's the only thing about this material that I use right now for doing my detailing is the dry time on it is super sensitive. If it dries completely with you on this stuff, it streaks. It leaves that streak behind. On the black plastic stuff, you don't notice it as much, but you really do notice it on the chrome. And if you have a really detailed out, bright, shiny paint, it will show and leave streaks. Chrome, it seems to be the worst though. All right, so that quick, we've gone through and we've detailed up the front grille on this truck. So there's no more bug guts left on the front grille here. This is all nice and cleaned up. The plastic, the headlights, everything is just pretty much done. There's nothing left to do up front as far as detailing on paint. I might choose to clean up a little bit on my fairings if I notice I got a bunch of bug guts, but if they're fairly clean, I'm not going to worry about it. We got one last mirror to clean up here. I know the sun is really distracting to you guys. Just like that, we've cleaned up our mirror. As far as what you guys do for storage, oftentimes I'll just vacuum out my box. I'll clean it up, wash it out, make sure I don't leave any dirt or anything in the cracks or corners. Get it all cleaned up. Some people will actually store stuff in their box. I'll be storing an AC unit in here that I use in my garage in the summertime. So I'll be plopping my AC unit in the back here under cardboard. That way it doesn't wreck my bed liner, but this is a pretty durable coating. This is a Line-X. I'm really happy with how they did this Line-X for me. I asked them to do a little bit over the edge, as you guys can see, because I wanted this edge protection for if I was leaning over the box and I was resting something on the edge of this box. I wanted it to be able to not get scratched up And this was a really nice thing that I actually asked them for to do, and it really did make a difference on the look of the truck. These are really small rails, and this really did kind of clean up the look of this truck and make it more utilitarian purpose for what I was going to use it for in the box. So let's dive into the interior here, guys. This is the next area of concern when you're dealing with storage. Again, you're going to always want to look underneath your seats for any food debris. Don't leave any wrappers or old fries or anything like that in your interior. No food in here whatsoever when you go to store it, because you will get mice in it. They're going to get into important wiring harnesses. They're going to chew into plastic stuff. They're going to damage this interior. So making sure you take everything out and don't leave paper and stuff behind is really important. I keep a wrench with me just so I can disconnect that battery when I move it into storage. This is a nice thing to have near the vehicle if you're going to store it so that you can disconnect a battery. Plus, if you're parking in a neighborhood that you don't necessarily trust, this is a quick way to disable the car so that nobody can steal it. Now, if they're smart enough, they'll go underneath the hood and see what you did, but there's other ways you can deter people from doing that. I'll make another video on that some other day. But as far as that, I make sure everything's clean. I'll vacuum really well, get the carpeting clean, get underneath the mats. I will even take the time to clean the mats before I put the vehicle away so that when I put this away, for me, it's in pristine condition, meaning it's ready for me to jump in it, start it up. I don't have to do a lot of extra stuff. The last thing we're going to talk about and do is windows. So we want to get these windows clean, and we want to get all of them clean. Now, if your windows are somewhat already clean, I'm going to show you guys a quick trick that we can do. So I'm going to go and get what I need quick, and I'll be right back and show you guys a quick technique to clean these windows. All right, so I grab a fairly large microfiber like this, and if I know that it's just dusty, like I know that there's no streaks in the glass, I know it's not super dirty, I will choose to just take this rag, I'll fold it up into a fourth, or into fours, like so. And I'm just going to wipe the glass down, meaning that I'm going to be removing any dust or any minor streaking. This is not meant to be used as a cleaner. It's just doing a quick little wipe across to make sure there's no dust or dirt. And I get all of my windows and glass, so all of them. And I usually start outside and work my way inside. So next I'll move to some of my inside stuff here. And if I notice that I got a bunch of streaking, it may be hard to show you guys. But on that mirror, you can see some streaking there at the bottom of that mirror. So you can try to use your rag to wipe some of this. If it doesn't work, we can always grab our detailing spray that we used on our windows, paint, and chrome, and we can clean it up that way. So I've wiped it. Let's see if the wiping it works. Nope, there's still some streaking there. So we're going to go ahead. Dive back to our detail spray. I'll grab that quick. And if we do our detailing spray right, it'll remove all of that streaking. So I'm just going to wet this real quick. So on glass, I don't give this detail spray a lot of time to tack up. I don't really want to work at buffing it off real hard, so I'll just wipe it quick and then change over to the dry rag. Now, let's see if we've got that off. And now it's gone. So now we don't have any streaking in that mirror. And that's the same detail spray that we used on the exterior. So that's how we would go about doing this detailing project, just wiping everything down, using the materials that I just showed you guys. That's what's really important here, is having the right chemicals to use. Now again, I got to get you guys the info for the secret sauce so you guys have it. And once I get you guys that info, you can contact my detailing guy and he will gladly get that stuff for you. And I'll be warning him that I dropped all of his info so that he knows to look for online orders. So keep an eye out for chats here. We'll probably get into news here in just a bit. A95, hey brother, hey, good to have you here on this Saturday. Every Saturday we go live at 1 p.m. Central. And we do all automotive content over here. We get into a lot of different automotive topics. Today's is on prepping for winter storage. We already covered engine, we already covered transmission, we had covered the rear axle, and we covered paint. What could possibly be left after we've already covered our interior and stuff like that? Next is making sure that the storage unit that you're putting it away in is nice and sealed up. Make sure that it's not open to the elements. Make sure there isn't a place for mice to get into the garage or get into that storage unit. If you have a storage unit that's notorious for having mice in it, it's not a bad idea to put mice traps in it, just to trap them so that they don't get into the vehicles. That's another big issue here, is sometimes when we store vehicles, we don't put them in a place that we can protect them very well. Knowing where you put the vehicle and knowing the environment that it's going to be in will help you decide whether that's a good environment for you to put that vehicle. I do have options of putting this vehicle out on a farm someplace, but if I do that, when I come back to it in the spring, there's going to be mice in it. There's going to be a whole bunch of other things going on inside that vehicle that I'm not going to want. And to me, I would rather pay for a good storage unit that's sealed than to put it away in one that's open to the elements. Just because it's under a car canopy doesn't mean that this vehicle is protected from the elements. Car canopies are all right if you live in southern climates. They might help keep the sun off, which might be your biggest enemy, but they're not going to protect it from the insects. And the last thing you want is to have an insect infestation in your vehicle, whether that be mud wasps, whether that be black widow nests or any of that. You're not going to want that stuff in your vehicle. You're not going to want it in or around. So having a good sealed storage unit makes all the difference. Oftentimes I will look at a storage unit. I'll ask to see a couple units when I walk in there. So I'll want to see a few different units and different sizes to make sure I'm getting what fits best for me. But what I'm also doing is looking at seeing at the condition that the storage unit is in. If I open up one of the units and there's a bunch of black widow nests in there, I'm not renting from that place. And it's not that I wouldn't rent a different unit, it's that I'm not going to rent from that company, because there's a chance they're not maintaining that storage unit and it could come back to bite you. So that would be a really big tip I would have for you guys when storing them in storage units, is inspect the storage unit itself. Make sure that it's clean. If it isn't clean, chances are it's not maintained. And if it's not maintained, you're going to have everything getting into those vehicles. and that we do not want. It's very time consuming and very expensive to remove rodents from vehicles and fix the damage that they cause. Mice can chew up wiring like you would not believe. And when they start chewing in wiring, unless you get them out, they just keep damaging everything. I've seen them get into fuse panels and literally chew all the wires off the back of the fuse panels. They don't care about the 12-volt shock that they get when they bite into wires. Apparently that isn't enough to deter them from chewing up wiring. So they keep on doing it. Plus, if you disconnect the battery, there won't be 12 volts there to shock them either, so they're going to make their nest in there. I've had vehicles that I put into storage and had rather large field mice, which they're not the size of a rat, but they're not the size of a mouse either. They're bigger. They're right in between the two. A field mouse is pretty big. And I've had field mice build their nests in the engine compartments because they can't get into the interior. They're too big to crawl in. So they'll make it on top of the engine and they'll sleep on there for the winter. And yeah, I had a storage unit that I will not rent from them again because they had an opening and it allowed field mice, big mice, to get in there. So again, take the time to inspect those storage units. Make sure you guys get a good unit. Don't waste your money on something that isn't protected, not only from other people, but also from insects. That's the key here. Next, you might want to do some things to disable the vehicle so no one else can really tamper with it when you're not around. Now, mechanics will know how to fix whatever you're about to do, but the average person's not going to know. One thing that always helps is going into your fuse panel and remove a few of the relays. By removing a few relays, you can deter people from wasting time trying to figure out what you did to the vehicle. A simple pulling of a fuel pump relay can really cause an aggravation to somebody who doesn't know anything about that vehicle being in storage other than it's there. Even if you leave the battery in it, if the relay's pulled, they're going to have to bring relays with, or they're going to have to try to decide what they're going to pull a relay out of in order to power that fuel pump. Well, if you pull all the relays that pertain to that fuel pump, they'll have to bring one with for that to work. Andrew. Hey, I'm from the UK, HGV diesel tech of 19 years here. Hope you're good. Good to have you. Andrew, if you can help answer questions and do good in the chat, I do like having mechanics as my mods. You guys usually know how to help answer other people's questions and stuff that are in here. I always do this every Saturday or Sunday at 1 p.m. Central. So it's good to have you here. Again, we always try to help people out with your projects. If you guys got projects, don't be afraid to ask down in the questions. Torque specs, things like that. You know, how do I go ahead and fix this wheel bearing? Or I'm having this brake issue. What do I do? We will try our best to get you the answers that you need and try to steer you in the right direction. We got one here. Bro, any car body shop works available in your country for Indian? I guess which it all depends on what you're really looking for. We do have some shops that'll work on some stuff. I'm from the US, so a lot of our stuff here is domestic, and we do deal with a little bit of the foreign with the Hondas, the Toyotas, stuff like that. As far as more of the other countries, we don't see a lot. We see a little bit of Alfa Romeo, little things like that. But for us, a lot of it's going to be just kind of the basic maintenance and repair items that we're going to be able to do on foreign vehicles. Foreign vehicles, oftentimes you can't get a lot of parts for unless you're able to get them directly from the country of the vehicle. Toyota is a prime example of this. Toyota is very, very tight on their parts. They won't give you out part numbers for parts. I've done videos for door seals. I can't get the part numbers from Toyota because they won't give them out. They're that tight on their part numbers. Where if I could give somebody a part number, they could take that part number and go to the Toyota dealer, which is the only place you can buy door seals for this truck, is at Toyota, even though this truck is over 20 years old already. Wrenching Mafia, hello, how's it going? Good, good. Good to have you here on this Saturday. Any chance of getting cleaner job in bar? Maybe. So yeah, when it comes down to it, what we want to do when we store these vehicles is we want to make sure that they're put away in the best possible condition. So I don't ever suggest somebody storing a vehicle that needs a bunch of work done to it. We got a prime example of that coming up this winter with Malibu Steel. Malibu Steel is an aging vehicle that needs some work. It needs some TLC put into it for me to put a couple more years on this car. My goal is to run this car as long as I possibly can, and I need to do some maintenance to it. Before I do that, I've been using it as my daily. I also have to get a vehicle out of storage that's going to take over the place of that one being my daily for my winter time. Meaning that through the winter months when it's ugly and there's salt and snow and all this other stuff on the road, I'm able to drive that vehicle instead of driving Malibu Steel. The trade-off is the fuel mileage, which is why Malibu Steel is getting a massive upgrade this winter as far as we're digging into everything. We're going to make sure that it's all solid, everything's good to go, and I don't have any problems. One of those issues on Malibus is the shocks and struts. It's got to be done. I cannot avoid it. It has to be a priority to get those parts in there and get it ready for next year. Next is the timing. Timing chains on GMs have gotten historically worse. So now if you don't do a timing chain before 160,000 miles on a GM car, the chains are going to wear through the guides and it's going to slip in the timing. If that timing slips, the motor is destroyed. There's no two ways about it. The motor is junk. You have to replace the engine. That engine's $2,000. I don't feel like replacing that engine. And honestly, the car is aged enough now, I wouldn't stick an engine in Malibu Steel. It's too old. So at that point, I would replace it with something else. So we're going to bring it in, we're going to tear it down, and we're going to do some maintenance work to that this winter. We're going to look over the suspension. We're going to get the engine stuff straightened out to where it needs to be. That way I can put it back on the road with confidence and run that car the way it should be ran. Again, that's why I always say when you put one away, make sure it's in great condition when you put it away. Because now when I pull this out of storage in the wintertime, I'm going to feel good just jumping in it, hooking up the battery, letting it idle for a good probably 20 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. Then I can go ahead and drive it. That's the other thing. Let's go ahead and quickly talk. I know I'm going to talk about this next spring when I bring one out. When I probably bring this one back out, do another video on this, only this time it's going to be waking up a vehicle. And one thing you want to do when you wake up that vehicle is you want to get the battery in it. You want to cycle the key a few times, get the fuel pressure up, get everything where it needs to be. Once you get to that point, you're going to want to start the vehicle and let it idle. Do not give it any gas whatsoever. Andrew, we have a wet cam belt on Fords that drive on the oil pump that clogs up with oil pickup. Shocking design. Yeah, that's something that Ford guys got to deal with. Chevy guys deal with cam phasers. They also deal with actuators, cam actuators. We just had cam actuators go out in Malibu Steel. I just did that video not too long ago. Also, you deal with a lot of different stuff. Anytime you're dealing with some of these newer designs, I've even seen some of the newer Dodge oil pump designs. And when they get low on oil pressure, they're going to take out the cam. So in order to do it according to the book, they want you to drop the entire oil pan out. Well, they suggest you pull the engine to do that because they don't think you can get enough room to get access. What guys are finding is that they undo the bolts all the way down the side and around the front of the oil pan. and they can carefully pry down on it just enough to lift the oil pump out and free it from the oil dipstick, or I should say the sump that goes into the pan. The sump on those engines are designed into the pan, meaning that it's a one-piece sump pan design. Bad design by Dodge. I really wish they would have corrected their issues, but they never did. And they never will, because now they're trying to go full EV. Andrew, that was a good one. I'm going to go ahead and slide you a wrench for helping out here. I think you're going to make a good mod in the future. There you go. You should be made a mod now. That was a good one. Not a lot of people bring up an engine issue like that. That is one that is very problematic for the Ford side. Just the way that they run their drive setups on their oil pumps, it's crazy. The fact that they would want you to tear down half that engine to get at that stuff, and that one wasn't even the worst design. The worst design belongs to Ford also on the, I believe it was the 5.4 liters. So the Triton 5.4s. They did their cam setups on the back of the engine, meaning you had to pull the engine to do your timing chains and all that because it was on the back side of the engine. So when the cam phasers went out and you had to put a new timing chain in because the chain stretched, you were pulling the engine because you needed to access the entire back of the engine. When I heard that, I was like, yeah, I'm never touching a 5.4 Triton ever, because it's just going to be nothing but a nightmare from the word go. And all it takes is for one cam to be out of phase to completely mess up an entire engine. And when you got double cams, it happens really quickly. Or sometimes you'll have 4 cams depending on the setup. It just depends on how many valves they had in there, how fast they were trying to exhaust everything out, how the flow meters worked on the engines, how they were building their power. So what we're seeing now, at least in the car atmosphere though, we're seeing a different push. We're seeing a push towards high compression 4-cylinder engines that are producing more horsepower. The issue that we're seeing with that particular setup though is the engines are going to wear out faster because we're pushing them so much harder to do what a 6-cylinder should do. So we're taking a car that probably should have a 6-cylinder based on the weight of the car, and we're pushing it because now we're going to put a 4-cylinder in it and we're going to try to pump the horsepower out of it. So there's an adverse effect to that. In Europe, Ford uses the EcoBoost engines. Oh, I am so sorry for you guys. Those EcoBoosts can be absolutely nothing but a nightmare. I cannot pronounce your name whatsoever, but hello from Russia. Hi. It's good to have you. I'm here in the U.S. I do a lot of car stuff. So good to have you. EcoBoom. That's exactly what those are. They are EcoBooms. You drive them long enough and boom. It's what they do. Yeah, we give them the same nickname here in the U.S. They're known as EcoBooms because, yeah, a lot of people will take them out and they'll just stomp on them like they do, some of the GM stuff, and no, they don't handle that. Ford and their RPMs have never been very friendly. They build a lot of low-end torque on Ford engines, but they are very rarely have I seen very good high-revving Ford engines. They just are not designed for it. And if you want any longevity out of a Ford engine, do not be high-revving it, because it does not like it at all. You can float valves a lot easier. You can hear a lot of more pinging and popping where you shouldn't be. And each ping and pop means that engine is being stressed. So not a good thing. I cannot understand what that is. Yeah. It doesn't give me an option to convert what you just said. I know you said it there in Russian, but yeah, I'm not able to speak that at all. So, yeah, if you guys can think of any other topics that you guys want to talk about here, I'm going to probably start filtering into the news. So we had a little bit of news stuff this week, nothing really crazy. Like I said, a lot of the news stuff I said from now until the end of the year wasn't going to be super dramatic, but there are a few things enough for us to pay attention. The recalls on Ford is still becoming a problem. The Mustangs, Rangers, and Explorers of the early 2000s model are still having airbag issues. Now it's come down to where they can't produce the airbags. Like I told you guys, this was going to be an issue from the Ford camp. They were going to put out this recall, don't drive these vehicles. Now all of a sudden they have a problem getting the parts. You take your vehicle to them, it's going to sit. They're not going to let you drive it because they're deeming it a safety issue. What is the mechanic shortage like in the US? We got a bad one here as the youngsters aren't interested. I hate to tell you, it's not any different here in the US. Automotive industry is taking a really big hit right now. There's not a lot of people interested in it. Some of it is that the techs just aren't getting paid what they need to make a decent living nowadays. Basically, cost of living is shot way up here in the US. We struggle for the most part. You know, I don't work as a tech in a garage because I have my own garage. At the same time, I still work for a different company, a really large company that provides me benefits and all that other stuff. So because I'm doing that, yeah, you can kind of see where some of this comes from. And yeah, the whole reason I started this channel was to do some of my automotive projects and show people how to do other automotive projects as well. So this is kind of my giving back to helping people in the industry. If I had people around me that were interested and wanted a mentor and be able to do this stuff, I'd bring them in and even help them with, you know, do some of the recording stuff and work on stuff here in my garage that we could work on to kind of build the community up. I just haven't seen it in my neighborhood. And honestly, I don't know if I will because, yeah, the younger people are not super interested in automotive. The ones that are really motivated in it, and I'm happy to see that. But there isn't the overwhelming majority like it used to be when I was a kid. When I was a kid, most guys could know how to turn a wrench real quick. Nowadays, I don't see that. I see a handful at best of younger techs that are going to be really good. But for the most part, I don't see a lot of people coming into the industry. They're not getting into it. And some of it is that cars are being made disposable. I hate to say this because it really does speak to the future of this industry, and even having classic cars or something like that. Classic cars require a lot of maintenance and work. They're not just get in and drive like most people are used to. It ain't like driving a modern car. This one's not too bad because it's early 2000s, but it still requires work if I'm going to store the vehicle and keep it nice. So I do still have to do maintenance on it. If this was a 70s vehicle, I would be probably turning wrenches on it just as much as I'd probably be driving it. That's the trade-off, is we're not seeing that because it isn't a skill set that most people are having to learn nowadays. And I hate to say it that way, but you know, back in my father's day, which is now way back in the day, you had to know how to turn wrenches. You had to know how to work on your own car because you bought it and you didn't have a choice. It wasn't that you could take it to a shop and have them fix it. There were shops to fix cars, but it was too costly to take a car that you were already paying quite a bit of money for to have them fix it. So a lot of guys actually learned to work on their own cars then at that point. Andrew, yep. They are getting too complicated, even HGVSs. Lots of automobile faults. Euro 6 emissions rules here. Ugh. That makes me want to just, emissions. All right, yeah, we're facing similar things here as well. Emissions are starting to strangle the industry, meaning that we're forced to deal with whatever comes down the pipe. Far enough in the video now, I'll give you guys a sneak peek for next week. we're going to be doing some emission stuff. We're going to be doing something that removes the recirculation trash from the top of your valve cover and doesn't allow it to dump back into the engine. I did this last week. I did a topic explaining everything that I was doing. I didn't have the hoses. Next week, I'll have the hoses. I've already bought everything. I've kind of pre-fit everything. I haven't cut or done any of the install yet because I'm going to save that for the video. But yeah, that's coming up. You guys are not going to want to miss that one, because that one is going to show you how to keep oil from getting out of the top of the engine back into the engine through the intake system. This recirculation system they did just destroys engines. It destroys throttle bodies, it destroys injectors, it destroys the upper intakes. It gets them all gummed up with trash from the top of the valve cover. We want to get that stuff out of there. We want to remove that chance of that happening. So that'll be next week's topic, is the actual install on that. Henry, yeah, but they were so much more easier to work on back in the day than they are now, because it's all computer. Yes, Henry, you're absolutely correct. Back in the day, they were a lot easier to work on. Basic hand tools would do 95% of what you needed to do. Nowadays, you need to have a scanner, and you need to have a decent scanner. You don't have to have the big brick. The big brick is nice if you're going to be a technician and you need to test a lot of different stuff. If you're going to do basic wheel bearings, brakes, suspension, stuff like that, a lot of that you can do with hand tools, and you can also rent tools that you need from an auto parts store. So that's always an option. But I will agree with you. Without that scanner to tell you what the code is, you're not going to know what to replace. A check engine light nowadays is not something that you go, oh, hey, I just got to fix this. Nope, that check engine light could be 70, 100, 120, 200 different items on that engine that could cause that check engine light, and you need to figure out which one it is. So I will give you that. I do have a really good scanner that I use, and you can buy the lower grade models of it, but you can also buy higher grade that allows you to do a lot more functions and features. Let me grab that for you guys right now, because, yeah. So it's an Innova scanner, and mine is the one that does ABS, does SRS, which is safety restraint. ABS is pretty self-explanatory. That'll also tell you wheel bearings. And it allows me to do engine and also advanced scanning. So the advanced scanning will give you codes outside of the OBD2. Meaning that if you're throwing a code across several different monitoring systems, it'll show that code. And that is a really nice feature to have, because it'll give you a much, much better idea of what's going on. Andrew says, hey, Henry, I got a Genden scanner, similar. Yeah, those are similar. There's quite a few. I'm actually looking at an upgrade to that one that's going to run me anywhere from $500 to $1,000, and that scanner will allow me to do 34 different scanning functions. So that'll allow me to really dig into what's going on with cars, and I can really see what's going on with that engine. We had a chat there from a language I cannot speak. I'm guessing with the peace symbol, he's saying hi, so hi to you. Nice to have you here on this Saturday. So some of the other news, guys, you know about Stellantis and them gutting Dodge, Ram, and Jeep. It's going to get a lot worse. Chrysler is talking about, they're talking about just shelving Chrysler altogether next year. Dodge has already been gutted down to 2 cars. They're potentially talking about possibly gutting Dodge maybe down to 1 car. Right now, they're only going to be focusing on the Hornet and on the new electric EV charger. So when they do that, the fan base is destroyed. It's gone. Even if somebody bought that company back away from Stellantis, which they're not going to sell it because they bought it to sell their cars in the US. Whenever somebody buys it to bring it back, they're not going to be able to undo the damage that's been done to that industry and to that particular market of people. They're going to look at it and go, you guys just totally gutted the company and there's nothing left. And even if they start, they're going to be starting all over from square one, meaning a lot of the technology that was there may not transfer over to the new owners when they sell it. So it'll be sticky no matter what happens, but even if somebody buys them a few years down the road and tries to bring them back, it's not going to work. What we're seeing in real time is the death of one of the big three. We're seeing them being bought as a shell company to sell EV cars. That's what happened. And it's sad. I sold my Dodge. Guys, you probably know I got videos on here from my Dodge Ram. I got rid of it because I knew eventually this was going to come down. This was going to affect me. And I didn't want to deal with it. And this fell in my lap from a family member who passed away. So I made this my project instead. Andrew, white Teslas are popular here. Haven't got the Cybertruck yet. Yeah, there's some issue going on with Cybertrucks here in the US. A lot of them are being recalled for safety issues. They're finding that the vehicles are too heavy, so they're blowing through like a lot of the safety barricades on the side of the roads. EVs are starting to catch a bad name here in the US just for that reason. That they're too heavy. The battery packs add so much more additional weight to the vehicle that it's become such a safety issue that if they hit a guardrail, that guardrail is going to come up through the vehicle, not bounce the vehicle off the guardrail. And Rivian has the same issue. Rivian with their EV truck are having the same issue that the Tesla trucks are having, which is passing the safety administration regulations for that vehicle. It's all due to weight. It really is. They weigh too much, so they're blowing right through it, which is, it's nice to see that this is the case. But if you ask yourself what would happen if a semi ever hit that same barricade, we already know now based on what we're seeing on these big EV vehicles. Because that actually brings me into my next topic. Thank you, Andrew, for that one, by the way. My next topic is that because some of these issues have come up, there's been a lot of recalls currently for the Cybertruck in the US. The reason for this is they're not able to pass the safety regulations put forth. And because of this, they're doing a recall on it. They're really looking at what they can do to kind of change this. And honestly, there isn't much that they can do because just the shape of it, the design of it, the weight of it is making it to where these vehicles are just, there isn't much that they can do with it, unfortunately. It's an ugly beast that they're dealing with, and it's not going to get any better, especially on the weight side of things. And that's what all the EV car companies are going to have an issue with. Andrew, all manufacturers are going EV now to save the planet. I do push back on this because I don't see how EVs are going to save the planet when we have to strip mine the materials out of the ground. If we look at third world countries where they're mining this stuff, they are literally destroying the surface of this planet just to get that material out of the ground. And it's being destroyed in such a fashion that they can't fix the damage of them destroying the ground to get this mineral out. And because of this, it's not environmentally friendly to go with EVs. We're starting to hear some backlash in the US, and EV production has been cut. So don't be surprised if we see EVs kind of taper off over the next few years, because they're looking at the cost. They're looking at what it's taking to get these minerals. They're looking at all of these factors and going, it's not sustainable. Plus, Here's the factor that a lot of the EV pushers and people who are thinking that EVs are the way, what they don't tell you is that there's only so much lithium in this planet to be mined, period. There's only so much. And once it's all found, once it's all mined, that's it. They won't be able to make or get any more. What they don't tell you is oil is always being reproduced within our planet. It happens through the pressure in the plates underneath the ground and the friction of them moving. They're always creating oil, and they always will. The reason I say this is because, at least here in the US, they have had oil wells that they've pumped oil out of, stopped pumping oil out of, and then the oil levels rise. This doesn't happen unless something's refilling that. So that's my thoughts on it. Andrew, true, and he also texted Indeed or messaged Indeed. Yeah, that's what this is, you know, and I'm not afraid to call it out for what it is. I've gotten shadow banned more than my fair share of times on many different platforms by calling it out, but we have to look at the facts, and we got to stop expecting everyone to just go along with the rhetoric that being tossed by certain governments. And oftentimes I say, follow the money. Look at where the greed is. Look at who's profiting and who's screaming, we need to do this. Do they have their hand in the cookie jar because they're taking a kickback from the people making it? It's been a lot of the times I've looked into it. That's been the issue. but global warming, yeah, that's their excuse. That's the leverage point they use to twist the knife. They want to throw that in there. They want to come at you with that tagline, but when you come down to the bigger picture, they're not actually looking at the facts of the situation. They're emotionally involved, not rationally involved. Andrew, biggest companies are oil companies, Shell, BP. Yep. And some of those companies are actually, they're not sweating it. You know, if they were concerned that EVs were going to take over, they would have gotten into EV production. They would not allowed, you know, private companies to start investing. They would have just bought these guys up right away and snatched it up and switched everything over if they thought that was going to be the way. But they don't. And they're not going to, because they know it's not the future. They know there's only so much lithium available. The US is not going to let anyone tap into lithium in this country. It won't. They're too in their feelings about doing any damage to the environment. They're going to make the rest of the world do it, but not in the US. That being said, there's only so many places in the world that they can get the lithium. And when those places are used up and gone, which it won't take long, because from what I heard, one of the biggest lithium mines that they have found so far in Africa is already half gone. Half gone in this short a time. So what are they going to do when that's completely gone in the next 5, maybe 7 years? What are they going to do? Move to India? Yeah, I mean, they got some there, but there's only so many third world countries that they're going to be able to mine this out of before they run out. And that's the problem with the lithium. That's the problem with cobalt. Is very hard to get their hands on. Lithium, platinum is just as bad. These are all precious metals and minerals that you cannot reproduce. You just can't. Their profits up help with their private pensions. Crazy about lithium. Yeah, that's right now the lithium is just, prices are up right now because everyone is profiting big on it. Everyone's got their hand in that cookie jar, and they're all making good money off of lithium. But at some point the pony show is going to run out, and somebody's going to be left holding the bag, and it's going to be people who are later in the industry jumping in when they shouldn't. And I would say, if anyone was to invest in the lithium setup now, you're investing in the wrong future, because the people that are invested now are only selling because they're starting to see the issues with that setup. meaning that they're slowly going to start cashing and phasing out of their investments so that they don't eat the bigger bill. In the 60s and 70s, they were pushing global growth. Now the situation also more money to the government. Yeah, it really is. It's all special interest and who's putting money into where. And I always say, follow the money. You want to know the truth, follow the money, because wherever the money goes is where people are going to migrate to. And the biggest thing is look at where the huge amount of money is and then see how it's being funneled back in. Is it being shifted towards one side or the other? Is it being shifted towards a certain technology? Who benefits from that technology? Even as far as which political candidates are being backed by that. Yeah, I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Gail, good to have you here on this Saturday. Hi. Hey, are you, dude, sorry for that. I haven't been able to watch a bunch of your live streams. It's because I have been working on drywall. No, not a problem. Good to have you. Today's topic was on car storage and how to store cars. So it's good to have you here on the chat with, I just added a new mod today, as you probably saw up there in the chat. Moving forward, Bitcoin. Bitcoin. Guys, do not buy Bitcoin right now. Contrary to everyone's belief, do not buy Bitcoin. The reason I would advise no one to buy it is because the market is already too high on it. The market's way up. And you don't ever buy at a top. Don't ever buy at a really expensive level. You want to get in low when the value is low. Right now, it's too high. There's no profit left for it, and all it's going to take is Bitcoin to crash, and Bitcoin could crash if the federal government gets involved and starts regulating it, like they do with everything. At least here in the U.S., when a government touches something, it always goes bad. Doesn't matter what it is. Healthcare, retirement, let's name it. They touch it, it goes down. That's what happens. Gail, I'm buying millions and thousands of Bitcoins now just because you said that. If you've got the kind of money to buy in that high, then I could think of probably about 5 other things that would probably make you more money than a Bitcoin right now. That's a tremendous amount of money. I'm moving towards XRP. Yeah, I can kind of see that one being a possibility. Again, some of these coins I'm not really a fan of, because when it comes down to it, there is a push for a one world government, and if that happens, they're going to have their own currency, and all of the money that's tied into this will be forced to be sold at pennies on the dollar. And I don't want to waste my money into that kind of a setup. I would invest it into dividend stocks before I would ever go with a Bitcoin or any kind of coin at all. And especially some of these trash coins that are being sold by other YouTubers. Not a fan of that crap either. Those guys are scammers and should actually be charged for what they do. Andrew, take care. Off soon to fireworks display. Have fun, man. I haven't had a chance to go watch fireworks in a very long time. Gail, I'm going to buy a billion quadrillion. Yeah, not investing in Lego or nothing like nice. I buy stocks as well. SQ3 and TZA. Yeah, stocks can be a good option. Dividend stocks that pay you to have them oftentimes are your safer bets. Unfortunately, sometimes you got to be deep into them in order to get a decent dividend out of them. That's kind of the trade-off. There is a lot of influx going on right now. Honestly, I would tell everyone, with the way that the current political atmosphere is, at least here in the US, hold off from buying stocks or doing anything right now until after elections. There's too much too much market instability right now. A lot of companies are scared to invest because they don't know who's going to be in charge. They don't want to do things that are going to jeopardize their future benefits if they invest too heavy. Plus, the one thing that most people that are trying to tell you about investments won't tell you is try not to buy fourth quarter stuff, because fourth quarter stuff is not good. The fourth quarter stocks don't work. The reason why is because companies are cutting back now. All companies cut back for tax reasons. They cut back for that tax season. And it takes them a full quarter to recover, meaning that the better time to buy stocks and invest is in the early spring. We're talking March, February, March, and April, because that's when the companies are now in the upswing of things. The production's up, they're selling, they're building, restocking their inventory, everything's going up, meaning that's the best time to buy in. When you buy fourth quarter, you're buying in the drop. So when you buy it, it's going to come down. And I wish more people would talk about that factor when they're talking about investments, but they don't. Gail, stonks. Yeah. Yeah, you buy the right one, it's going to stink. I can tell you that. There's a lot of bad stocks out there. A lot of bad ones. Well, what about the IO or ISO? That could pose a challenge to a lot of different things. I only know a few things of what you're talking about right there. Those few changes could have an impact as far as what companies are going to be able to do, some of the regulations that are going to come down. I've only seen a little bit on the NW agenda. If that goes through and that starts getting pushed, we're going to see a lot more of large company and less of the small, meaning that it's going to be a stranglehold on a lot of different industries, on a lot of different countries. It's going to be harder to buy things. It's not a good thing. Now, the reason that all the countries in the world work so well, the way they're designed now, is because they're not subject to a one world government that tells them what they can and can't do. And when you have that, it really does strangle the potential growth of anyone trying to do new stuff or try to be innovative or design new things. It really is. I can already tell that YouTube's already starting to shadow ban me, bastards. Does anybody know it's... Yeah, we all know what that means. California, I tell you. Henry, I've got a 1965 John Deere gas tractor, and it still runs really good. Yeah, you got one of those. That's a nice little tractor. Not very popular, not very common. Definitely one I would consider maybe restoring or try to keep it all original. If you can't keep it original, at least restore it so it looks good and make sure that you keep it around and keep it in good shape. Those are not super common. There are a few out there. I've heard of a few guys that have had them in my area, but yeah, they're not. They would be almost considered now a collector tractor, is what they would be. So the last bit of news that I got, guys, is there has been some layoffs in massive amounts in some of the more major of the manufacturers. U.S. has laid off a bunch of people in the auto industry, and it sounds like it's going to get slightly worse before it gets better of next season. So as we're coming into holiday seasons, this is the worst time for people to be laid off, and some of the major manufacturers are cutting back because they realize that their cars are not selling. And because they're not selling, they're having to limit production, and they're trying to get ready for a different switch coming up here in the 2025 automobiles. There has been a push more towards the hybrid stuff, and that might start creeping in the big three. If that does, we're going to have to pay attention. Now, some of the more foreign manufacturers, such as Toyota, if you guys are pushing one of the new Toyotas, you have 2 different recalls out right now on your vehicle. One on the transmission, one on the engine. They did really bad with this car. This car has massive issues. This truck has massive issues. It's one that they really should have taken their time with and made sure that everything was straight, everything was right, and they put out a good product to begin with. But they outsourced the engines when they built them, found out that they had metal contaminants in it, and this went into their production vehicles. There's well over 100,000 Toyotas here in the US that are going to have engine failures due to metal contamination within the engine. So this was a faulty manufacturing process where the parts were not cleaned out before they were installed with the engines. And we're going to be eating a lot of engine failures here in the near future. If you have one of the newer Toyotas, this is 2022 and up, you're going to want to check that the Toyota Tacomas and all of those do not have a recall out on the engines or the transmissions, both for transmission failure and engine failure. So that's pretty much the last of the news. I'll keep an eye on the chats here for you guys a little bit. Cool, I'll look into that. What do you think of the 2030 agenda and how it will affect the economy, especially in the vehicle companies? Okay, so if it's allowed to happen, this is what we don't know, because there's too much going on right now in the current political sphere. We don't know. Depending on who gets in, what things get changed, what they don't, we don't know. That being said, in the automotive industry, we're already seeing it. We're already seeing automotive manufacturers scale down and not produce as much. We're also seeing the technology get shoved really high, meaning that we're seeing stuff that's getting crazy advancements. At the same time, nobody can work on it. So Stellantis with the Ram e-torque engines, prime example. High technology, no one else can work on it but Ram. So and until they release that information to the techs out in the other fields to work on, that is proprietary tech, which means really auto manufacturers are not supposed to do that. So the fact that they're getting away with it tells me that as long as they're part of the bigger plan, they're going to be allowed to do things they should not have normally been allowed to do. And that's where we're going to start seeing big issues, and where people got to push back. They got to say, we're not up for this. We don't want to see this. We don't want to see this. And until that happens, we're going to all be subject to the BS. And the biggest thing is pay attention to who you're voting for, because if they're for that, you're going to have to deal with the fallout of whatever happens. They think they're above us, so they think they're going to do whatever they want. That's the problem. And as long as we allow those kind of people to occupy power, we're not going to be in a good spot. There has to be a change. And when I say that, more than what there has been a change the last 4 years, because that's not change. That's crippling. That's restrictive. Henry says, oh, she's all rain all night. I'm going to keep it that way. Aim high. 2030 agenda is a world economic forum. You will own nothing and you will like it. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's going to wind up being. Is it's a very restrictive. Basically, the elites own everything, and we have to rent from them. And when we step out of line, they're going to squash us like a bug. That's pretty much what that is. And we can choose to not vote for those people. We can choose to, honestly, the truth is, just to kind of keep this automotive, but at the same time express what's going on right now, we have to start changing out our political people all the time. There should never be such a thing as a career politician. These people are in too long, and it's too easy to get influenced by the corruption. It's too easy to take money from a company and vote a certain way and have them basically pulling the strings from behind the scenes, but meanwhile, the politician is also pulling their strings. This should not be this way. Our country should never have gotten to this, but it has, and we're here. So the truth is, the only way to reverse this is to make sure we change out our people all the time. Make sure there's always fresh people, fresh faces, fresh ideas going in. And until we start seeing that, that's the challenges we face. It's called sustainable development. Yeah. My question to you is, who is it sustainable to? That's the truth. We always have to take whatever our political leaders say and ask ourselves, whose interest is it for? And again, follow the money. You're right on that, Bubble. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't want to break the bubble for everyone. I push the issue, and sometimes I get shadow banned for it over here. It's what I have to do. I started this channel to try to help people get into doing automotive repair. Unfortunately, the government has crept in and caused automotive to go spiraling out of control, meaning that tech is more important than longevity and reliability. A lot of cars now are disposable. They're 100,000 mile throwaways, and it should not be that way. Not only is that wasteful to the planet, which they believe so highly in, as we got to protect the planet. So then why are we making cars that we throw away every 7 to 10 years? We used to have cars that would go 25. We don't have that anymore. Most cars nowadays reach that 7 to 10 year range and they fail completely. And all it takes is one minor thing to spiral into a much more expensive thing, and it's done. The car is totaled. And poor manufacturing processes have made it to where engines don't last as long, transmissions don't last as long. We have the technology to make this stuff last 25 years, but they don't want to do that because they want to keep you hooked into debt, keep you buying new cars so that you can't take that money from those new cars and spend it somewhere else. Once they got their claws in you, they don't want to let go. And that's what it is when we make inferior products, it has a claw effect, meaning it claws into you, it won't let go, because the minute that you think you got it paid for, the vehicle goes bad and you got to buy another one. Yeah, it's not for us, obviously. Yeah, no, it's not for us. None of these agendas being pushed are for average people. They're not. It doesn't matter if it's coming from, WHO. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's not meant for us. It's not meant for the average person. It's not meant for the average person out working, a daily job trying to support their family. None of this is to support them. Henry, yes, you're right on that, but they last a lot longer than they do. It depends on who owns them, though. That's the thing, is newer cars don't last as long because it does depend on who's fixing them, who's maintaining them. Are they doing the maintenance that they're supposed to do? And you could almost say that for the older stuff, but the older stuff was a lot easier to work on. It was a lot easier to get parts for. So that's the trade-off. The trade-off was back then, parts were a lot easier to get. You could even put used parts in. It was a lot easier to get your hands on that stuff. Now, it's really restrictive to get your hands on some parts. Maintenance isn't done as it should be, so now the cars have become cheap throwaways. And without people in the industry wanting to work on cars, it's gotten worse. So what about the voting logic? All right. All right. So let's go ahead and let's just touch on the voting. I know that it's coming up here, guys. I know everyone has their own political views and beliefs. What I tell people is look into the future. Don't look at the candidate nearly as much as look at the future of what it's going to be like under that administration. And not all situations are going to be the same. Each state is different, at least here in the US. I know people in foreign countries that watch me aren't going to understand what I'm about to say, but you have to look at what your potential future is going to be. We already know what it's like with the current administration under the last 4 years. We have to ask ourselves, what does that look like if we went another 4 more years with it? We know what it looked like 8 years ago. We knew where our home prices were. We knew how much money we were able to take home every year. We knew what our taxes were going to look like. We knew that we got tax cuts where we didn't get them before. The other thing is we also have to learn to vote based on our own moral beliefs. And for me, morally, there's one side I cannot go with at all. The reason why is they truly believe in a culture of death. They want to back something that I stand strongly against. I stand strongly against abortion. I believe in women having the right to take care of themselves, but when you choose to have a child, you're already down that path. And to end a life just to make your life better is wrong. It's not moral. And that's how I feel. Gotta scroll back up here. I got a few chats that I haven't checked. Chevy, 2012 and under are some of the best makes. Yes, I would somewhat agree with that, maintenance guy. That year truck seems to be pretty solid. Again, I just talked about a massive recall that came out on the transmissions for the 2015 through 2022 on the GM side. They got slapped with that with that engine lawsuit and, or I should say transmission lawsuit, and they lost it. They lost the lawsuit on the 8-speed transmission it was found that they put out that 8-speed and it was a faulty transmission from the beginning, and they knew it was going to fail. So if you have one of those vehicles of that year, make sure the transmissions have been repaired properly. Do a full inspection. If you have one of those transmissions and you need to get it fixed, get a second person involved to make sure that the repairs are done right. Get a secondary shop, not another GM dealer, a secondary shop. Somebody who is also certified in GM transmissions and can verify that that repair was done properly. Next one is, hi, you are the best. Thank you, sir. Maintenance guy, it was made for working guys to work on them. Yes, exactly. That's what the newer vehicles were. Maintenance guy again, Trump is the best candidate for sure. Next, Trump asked about Chevrolet on the road in Germany. Angela said it makes better cars. Yeah, some cars. Unfortunately, GM has done a lot for research and development. They stick a lot of money in their research and development, a crazy amount. Because they stick so much in their research and development, they tend to put out better products. Now, where they went wrong is There's times they've gotten caught with their hand in the cookie jar and done bad things that have come back to haunt them. That 8-speed transmission in the half-ton Silverados that I just talked about is another prime example of them getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Also, culture of lies. Yeah, that's the problem, is we're allowing our politicians to live in a culture of lies. We're propagating that lie by not calling them out on it. What lies? I live in Germany. Come again. Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of, he said, I had to read the next one down there. He said, I'm talking about Kamala and Waltz. Yeah, guys, if you haven't figured out where I live, I'm very familiar with one of those candidates. And I can tell you right now, we don't want to see somebody who was willing to let a whole city burn and defund the police, because that's what happened. And I lived through it, I know. Maintenance guy, 07 Chevy Silverado. And as long as you do the right maintenance, it lasts forever. Yes, until the body rots apart. Frames are a little stronger in that one, but yes, they do rot pretty quick. Maintenance guy, you've been doing some good little stuff here, tidbits. I'm going to go ahead and wrench you up too. Welcome to my mod squad, man. Gail, do you know today is November 2nd and not October 33rd? Nice. Jose, Trump, and a whole bunch of emojis. Okay, Gail, you had a couple of restricted there. I don't know what happened there. That was probably an accident. Scrolling through to look at chats. So, thoughts on 2-valve 5.4 Triton. All right, let's go ahead and get into the 2-valve Ford stuff, guys. 2-valve Ford, I think, is a better engine. I think the 4-valve and 3-valve stuff was not a very good design. Too many cam phasers, too much to go wrong. When they started going with more valves and trying to do more crazy things with the top end of the engine, they wound up having a whole lot more problems. When they kept it to the 2-valve, it was so much simpler. Those engines, the biggest headache you're going to have is manifold bolts breaking, which they used cheap manifold bolts. The head material isn't as good, so you have to be careful not to strip out threads. That was some of the worst that I saw from the 2 valves. 3 valves had a whole bunch of internal issues, almost to the point you don't even really want to touch those engines. They're just a mess. Maintenance guy, yes sir. Thank you for the welcome. No problem. Thank you for being here on the mod squad. Gail. So I got a question again. So basically, what car would be the best if you were in a climate all the time, but also in winter, it snows really bad? So if you're in a climate where it snows and you get really bad snow, I'm going to throw out a few states here just to give you an example. If you're in Michigan, you're in New York, if you're in Montana, if you're in any place that gets huge amounts of snow dumped on it, you're going to want something 4-wheel drive. It's got to be 4-wheel drive. Next, if you're trying to save fuel, go with a 6-cylinder 4-wheel drive. Don't go with the V8s if you're trying to save that fuel. The other option is, do you need a box? If you need a box, then you're looking at a pickup versus than an SUV. For me, I have a smaller SUV, so I have a GMC Jimmy. Works great for me getting around in the winter. if I was to haul something, I would haul it in, I noticed my internet goofing up there for a bit. Let me make sure my connection's still good, guys. Okay. Yeah, if you're doing anything that you can get by with a small SUV, that would be a little bit better on fuel. So kind of what I would go for. Invalid argument. How about the 2-valve versus 3-valve 6.8 V10? So the V10s in my mind were still, they were sold as a torque engine to be competitive with the diesel side. Honestly, they weren't very torquey. They seemed to do a little bit better with high-end RPMs, but they weren't built for it. So meaning they didn't have the right cams in them. And because they didn't have the right cams in them, you would have to rebuild the engine to get that back out of it. You'd have to do some work there to get that back in from factory. And now we're talking factory, we're not talking anything modified. If they were modified, then yeah, you would have to do a little bit. Once they're modified, you can pretty much get what you want out of them. Again, anything 3-valve, I tend to stay away from just due to issues with the valve and the failing of those cam phasers, because it does a lot of weird things with oil pressure to make those cam phasers work. And because of that, I tend to lean away from those. Chevy is my favorite automotive American brand. I've had a lot of GMs in my day. I've had GM, Ford, Dodge. I've owned them all. At least of the major three, I've owned them all. And as far as easy to work on and more comfortable to drive, top slot would go to GM. Next would probably be Ford, followed by Dodge. And with the way things are going currently, Dodge pretty much has fallen off the list. I would put Toyota where Dodge was for sure, just because Toyota seems to actually care and stand behind their stuff and actually will do their recalls, where Dodge and Ram is just completely failing altogether. Gale, Ohio. Yep, you get a lot of snow there. So I would say anything SUV or pickup, base it on, do you need fuel mileage? If you need fuel mileage, then go with a smaller SUV that's 4-wheel drive. I would try to get something that's an actual 4-wheel drive, not an all-wheel drive, because the all-wheel drive has a lot more wear. There's a lot more wear and maintenance items. I'd stick to a 4x4 that can be switched down to 2-wheel drive when you're not needing it, because then you don't wear out the front components. Let's scroll back up here. Michael says that's right. Gail, maintenance guy, congratulations on becoming a new mod. Maintenance guy, Gail, thank you. Or thank you, Gail. Glad to be on the team. Yeah, it's good to have you. I like to get my mods built up here so that you guys are in every week or every weekend when I'm going live. All right, Danny, that's just weird. I'm going to move on with that one. Okay. But yeah, Gail, that's what I would suggest to you. Focus on what you need and then buy based on those needs. So if you need a box, it's a pickup. If you're going to need 4-wheel drive for where you live, it's a fact. You're going to need it there. I know that. I know the Midwest area really well. So yeah, you're going to need that 4-wheel drive. And then once you have that, you're pretty much good to go as far as what you're looking for. Toyota 4Runner versus a Toyota Tacoma. All depends if you need that box. Same with the GM side. You know, it could be a Colorado versus a Blazer. you know, those are kind of your trade-offs. If you need to have something with a V8 engine and you don't need the fuel mileage, you can crank it up to where you have a lot better horsepower and torque when you need it. Now, if you're stepping up to a half ton, that means you're going to be hauling quite a bit of stuff in a box or potentially a trailer. If you're going to pull a trailer, then absolutely get after that and go with that setup as far as a heavier pickup. If you're going to pull a lot of trailers, though, you're going to have to go to the 3/4 ton truck. It's going to be horrible on fuel unless you get a diesel. Diesels are going to be more costly and a lot more maintenance. So hopefully that answered your question, Gail. And thank you guys so much for handling that. That was awesome. Thank you, mods. You guys are in here for that reason. So thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up, guys. This has been a really good live. I was able to show you guys some of the processes and steps that I do when I detail a car to put it away into storage. I covered a lot of topics that pertain to stuff coming up in the very near future, especially some voting stuff as far as where our country's going, things like that. Answered a few of the more controversial topics. So I'm kind of glad I was able to do some of that stuff for you guys. It's been a great live. We've had a lot of engagements, a lot of likes. That means a lot to me. It really does help build this for next week. You know, each week I try to get more and more engagement. It really does help. Maintenance guy, good channel, really good info. Thank you very much. I try to keep this, I try to structure it like this just so that my mods know what's going on. I try to structure it so that I do my demos in the beginning, get all that stuff out of the way, do all the explanation, get into the news, and then I just allow open chat at the end, and wherever the chat goes is where I let things happen. And I'm not afraid to talk on a topic. If I don't know, I will tell you guys honestly that I don't know. If I do know, I will try to give you the piece of info, but I trust my mods to jump in and help give info as well. You guys have been doing awesome so far as my mods. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have any bad mods, and this is awesome. You guys are here, you guys are engaging, you guys are doing what needs to be done to really help out the channel and help it grow. So every Saturday or Sunday at 1 p.m., I go live here. I try to post the topic about 2 hours before I go live. If you guys think I need to drop this sooner, like a day ahead of time, let me know. And that way I can drop ahead of time. That way you guys know if it's Saturday or Sunday. Yeah, if that works, I will try to do my topic posts on, like, I can pre-make my live. So I may pre-make my lives maybe Friday if that works better for you guys. It's something I can do within a few minutes. It doesn't take me very long, and it's something I can do in between something else that I need to be doing. So I could definitely handle that, and that would also make sure that I do something I'm supposed to do on Friday. So that would work awesome on that. But thank you guys for tuning in. This has been an awesome live. We've done a lot of things. We've had a lot of engaging conversation. But as always, I'll see you guys on the next one.